call, given that we do have members online. I will be flexible within reason for the length of time that people speak due to circumstances. Now moving to the agenda. Item number 1, are there any apologies for absence?
No apologies received, Provost.
Thank you very much. Item 2, declaration...
Provost.
Sorry, Councillor Wallace. Apologies.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder if I could put apologies in for Councillor Jim McLean, who sadly unfortunately was called into hospital sends his apologies for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace, and I'm sure we all wish Councillor McLean our very best for a quick recovery, but thank you very much for adding those. Item 2, declarations of interest. The Councillors' Code of Conduct requires elected members to declare any connection they may have in any of the items on the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? There are none indicated. Thank you. Now, item 3. Very sadly, this is about Councillor Betty Cunningham, OBE, and members and officers will be aware of the passing of our colleague, Councillor Betty Cunningham, on the 31st of May 2025. There will be an opportunity at the end of this evening's meeting for members to pay tribute to Betty. However, I would ask everyone in the chamber to join me now in observing a minute's silence as a mark of respect to Betty, who was a long-standing councillor and former Provost of East Renfrewshire. Thank you. As of now. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, everybody in the chamber. So, there is now an alteration of order of business, item 7, and given that we have a number of people in the public gallery, I'm using my discretion in terms of standing order number 20 to alter the order of business this evening, and therefore the Council would consider agenda item number 7, the notice of motion, at this point, following which we will have a very short interlude so that members of the gallery who wish to leave, although you're very welcome to stay, who might want to leave at that point. So turning now to item number 7. So can I check that Councillor Edlin and Councillor Morrison are still the proposers and seconders of this motion and wish to do so now? Thank you very much. Right. So I will now invite Councillor Edlin as the mover of the motion to speak for no more than 10 minutes. Councillor Edlin.
Thank you, Provost. Councillors, Section 65 of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act allows for a process whereby planning permission previously granted by a council can be revoked by that council on an application, either by that council, by the applicant, or a member of the public. If such an application is granted, the costs of the successful applicant from the granting of the application from the date of the original grant of the application until the date of revocation are borne by the Council. Let me stress from the start that this is not a motion to apply for the revocation of the planning application granted on the 15th of April for the construction and operation of a 40 megawatt battery energy storage system and associated infrastructure, but simply an application to permit the Council officers to determine the likely cost and process of such an application if it were to be proposed to this council at a later date. The main reason that the previous motion at the Planning Applications Committee was ruled to be incompetent was that the compensation costs were not determined, with these possible costs widely variant from minimal to vast sums of money. This motion is simply designed to allow officials to determine these possible costs and the process. Depending upon these costs as determined by officials, a motion under Section 65 could be brought at a later date. In this particular case, there is doubt about such costs, as the company whose application was granted apparently do not own the land in question. I would say and stress that this is not a party political matter, but rather a quasi-judicial issue about the decision of the Planning Committee on the 15th of April. I hope for this reason that elected members could be allowed a vote based on their own views rather than a party position. Members, you are not being asked to decide on these matters today. This is simply a background information on why a Section 65 application is being considered and the factors which have caused this motion to arise. These are: the planning application permits the erection of electrical storage batteries in Greenbelt land in Eaglesham, a conservation village, with concerns about safety of residents. There is evidence that such batteries have a risk of catching fire that is very dangerous for local residents, and I am told that 80 such batteries have already combusted. Members will be aware of reports of such fires in other areas, and there is evidence that these, once started, are almost impossible to extinguish, and they have to be managed by allowing them to burn themselves out, with concomitant damage to the residents' safety, to themselves and their property and their families. There is a result, local widespread concerns in Eaglesham and surrounding areas, and a petition has been signed by over 3,500 local residents expressing their concerns about this. Excuse me. In general terms, the other objections to this application are lack of green energy credentials and the process of the last application and the Council's Planning Applications Committee. A special meeting of the Planning Applications Committee was held on the 15th of April, and this was arranged prior to the Scottish Government's reporter's decision appealing the previous decision, giving the applicant 2 opportunities to get their application approved. This is most irregular. I am not aware of a special applications committee ever being organised in this way before in these circumstances in East Renfrewshire. There is also a judicial review petition about the planning application granted on the 15th of April. That is not relevant to the consideration of today's motion. It's not appropriate for any of these factors to be considered today, as I said, and this is solely a request to permit the Council's office to determine the likely cost of granting Section 65 approval. Again, Councillors, I would stress this is not a party political matter and is purely quasi-judicial. I commend the motion to the Council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Redland. I'll now open it out, including any amendments. Councillor O'Donnell.
Just to clarify, do you just want to know what the amendment is first, or do you want me to talk to it?
So you want to put forward an amendment?
I'd like to put forward an amendment.
Is there a seconder for that amendment?
I will second that, Provost.
Okay. Could you read out the amendment, please?
Perhaps if I could summarise the adjustments, if that's helpful, rather than read out all 6 paragraphs. Basically, the amendment is exactly the same as the motion, but with removing paragraphs 2 and paragraphs 3. Is that sufficient, or would you like me to read it all out?
Satisfied to understand it.
If members are quite clear that it's the deletion of paragraphs 2 or 3, then that would save us having to read it out when it's already been printed and issued. So, is there anything else you would want to say, Councillor O'Donnell?
Yes, thank you, Provost. The amendment is very simple. I believe all members can support the substantive actions in paragraphs 4 and 5. These will provide, hopefully, some sunlight on issues which have led to much public and sometimes misleading debate. It will be good to get certainty on these matters out in the public domain. However, I would note that it is my understanding that members of the Planning Committee who raised the motion here today could have pursued these substantive actions with a similar motion at the last planning meeting, but chose instead to pursue a motion that was clearly not competent, thereby delaying the actions proposed today. The only differences in this amendment to the original motion is to strike out and remove paragraphs 2 and 3. These include assertions and matters of judgment which we can't agree to as a council body. Their removal has no impact on the substantive actions requested in paragraphs 4 and 5, which we support. I have nothing further to add, and I move the amendment.
Thank you very much. And just to confirm, Councillor Pragnell, that's the amendment that you are seconding.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much. Councillor Anderson?
No.
Councillor Anderson? We can with that now, haven't we? I know. So, sorry? Doesn't come in with anything? No.
The
So-
seconder of the original motion.
It doesn't have to take place, does it? Seconded the motion?
Second of the
I
motion
think,
is
I think
Councillor
Provost,
Morrison.
yeah. Was Councillor Edlin moving the motion and was Councillor Morrison seconding it, and you got an
Yeah.
affirmative reply, so
Yeah.
it has been seconded.
Yeah. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Provost. I would like to move that the questions now put.
Okay, so I'll now hand over to Jerry to conduct the vote as whether the motion to that the question now be put be agreed by majority by the council. So I'll hand to Jerry now. Thank you.
Councillors, the issue just now is whether or not we move to a vote on the motion. So I'll basically ask you to narrate your position with the words yes or no. Yes if you wish to move now to a vote on the motion itself. No if you wish further comment and debate prior to that point. Okay? Councillor Anderson?
Yes.
Councillor Bamforth?
Yes.
Councillor Buchanan?
Yes.
Councillor Campbell?
No.
Councillor Convery?
Yes.
Councillor Devlin? Sorry, Councillor Devlin.
Sorry, there seems to be, it's not quite clear.
Say again, tell Jerry again.
Councillor Devlin, Councillor Devlin, we're just asking whether or not you wish to move now to a vote on the motion, or whether you wish further debate on the motion.
I think that was a yes.
I'm not picking that up, sorry, I've missed problems here.
Let me speak, Jerry. So, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Pragnell, has moved that we now go to the votes. So, if you agree with
I can hear that now, yeah.
That's
Yeah, I
fine.
agree with it, yeah.
Agree with that. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. Councillor Edlin?
No.
Councillor Ireland?
Yes.
Councillor Lundy?
Yes.
Councillor MacDonald?
I have to say, I'm really.
But it's a yes or no here.
No, I'm
thanks.
sorry. I have to say, this sets a precedent. I don't think I've ever been involved in a council meeting where we're actually taking a vote about whether we're going to debate an issue. I don't think we've
Councillor
ever done
McDonald,
that
if you-
in the history of.
Sorry,
I'll explain.
can you put your microphone off, please?
So my answer is a no. I would like to debate this.
Okay,
I would like
thank
to
you
share
very much,
points and
Councillor
criticisms.
MacDonald. It's in standing orders. Thank you very much. To you, Jerry.
Councillor Merrick,
Yes.
Provost Montague,
Yes?
Councillor Morrison,
Point of order. It says standing order 32K. The Provost decision is contrary to this standing order because the move of the motion has not been permitted to round up the debate.
I'll come to that. Yeah.
if I could explain, Councillor Morrison, the mover of the motion gets the opportunity to round up after the decision as to whether or not we move to a vote. The mover of the motion isn't precluded from summing up.
Okay, well, I'm glad my judgment of that, if slightly premature, is correct.
Thank you very
In
much.
which case, no.
Sorry, there's no other debate on this. We just need an answer from you, yes or no. Sorry, is that a yes or a no? I know, thank you.
Councillor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Councillor Pragnell,
Yes.
Councillor Wallace.
In the interests of transparency and openness, no.
So that the question be now put receives the support of 12 councillors as opposed to the opposition of 5, and that motion is accordingly carried. This means that the question be now put, but before the vote is taken on the motion and amendment, Councillor Edlin, as the proposer of the motion, has an opportunity to sum up.
And before that you do that, Councillor Edlin, it's just to say to you, you cannot introduce any new information from what you have said so far. So it's got to be on what you've said so far. You're summing up of that. Thank you.
Provost. I have to say that I'm surprised that this, first of all, I'm surprised that there's an amendment that I didn't know about. Since I've been elected as a councillor, I've always hoped that there could be more consensus amongst councillors, and I have no idea why this motion should be challenged by the councillors who proposed the amendment, quite frankly, because although there is a variation between the planning applications 1 and 2 in relation to the batteries, the fact of the matter is one was a battery on its own, the second was a battery surrounded by trees and with a tank of water. And to therefore delete that, to my mind, is pointless. And I can't see the reason for it other than the fact that certain members of the council are not prepared to accept a motion coming from the Conservative and Unionist Party. And I find that quite sad. I find that very sad because we are here to serve the residents of the whole of East Renfrewshire. And they're concerned about the welfare of people in care, they're concerned about their roads, they're concerned about all kinds of things. And today democracy has been suppressed because we can't discuss it.
Yeah.
Now, the motion, the amendment, if carried, will have the same effects, the same things will be done, but the statement has been changed because it suppresses aspects of the discussion which is not in the spirit of openness that I would like to think that this council has. And I'm very sad about it. I'm also sad that we divide in party political means, because this is a purely political decision as far as I'm concerned. And the motion is apolitical. The decision to have this motion to suppress it is political, and it is very sad for me because we're not serving the people that we should be serving in doing this.
Correct.
So sadly, we are where we are. I hope the people of East Renfrewshire will be listening to us today. And I hope we can, hopefully in the future, move forward on a more democratic basis than we behaved today.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edlin. I will now ask Jerry to conduct the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I'll now read out the roll call. This vote is in connection with the motion and amendment as proposed. If you wish to support the motion, could you just indicate the word motion? If you wish to support the amendment, if you could indicate the word amendment, and if you wish to abstain, could you indicate with the word abstain? I'll read out councillors in turn, and if you could respond accordingly. Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Councillor Bamforth.
Amendment.
Councillor Buchanan.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Convery.
Amendment.
Councillor Devlin.
Amendment.
Councillor Edlin.
Motion.
Councillor Ireland.
Amendment.
Councillor Lundy.
Amendment.
Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor Merrick.
Amendment.
Provost Montague.
Amendment.
Councillor Morrison.
Motion.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Amendment.
Councillor Pragnell.
Amendment.
Councillor Wallace.
Motion.
11 votes for the amendment, 5 for the motion. The amendment is accordingly carried.
Okay, thank you very much. A short adjournment now to allow the gallery to clear of those people who would like to leave now. Thank you. What is we asking?
The first time we read 12, but it's 11 because Councillor McLean we got it wrong the first time. That's that. I know it was 12.
Sorry, I've restarted the meeting now, Councillor Edlin. Held on the 23rd of April 2025, pages 5 to 16. The minute is submitted for approval. Can we agree the minute? Agreed? Thank you. Item 5. So there's a volume of minutes in front of you. So as usual, I'll read out the list of minute volume contents, and I'll take it as people are agreeing unless you come in and stop me. But I'm happy to go back if I've been too quick, as usual. Special Planning Applications Committee, 15th of April 2025. Sorry?
Provost.
Provost, I can't hear anything here.
But it's only on the accuracy. Are you disputing the minutes? Otherwise, you can't ask a question.
Under Standing Order 25, I'm permitted to ask a question.
Is it on the accuracy of the minutes?
It doesn't have to be on the accuracy. It's a matter relating to the meeting.
Okay, I will hand over to Jerry to determine this matter.
Can I just clarify, Councillor, exactly what it is that you're wishing to debate or ask?
I can ask the question, but it's now going to be public what my question is then. If you're happy with that, I want to ask the chair of that committee if the King's Council report relating to that planning application, which was commissioned by yourself as Chief Legal Officer, will now be made public in terms of the democratic accountability that we like to have in the Council, or whether it will not be made public.
If it's competent to ask such
Yeah,
an in-depth question. So given the contentious nature of this matter, I will ask Jerry in these circumstances to answer that question, Councillor Edlin.
Yeah, Councillor Edlin, the standard practice for any legal advice, either given by legal officers of the Council or received by external legal officers on behalf of the Council, is that it attracts legal privilege for obvious reasons. It would not generally be published. It would be used by the Council to further and defend the Council's own position in respect of matters. So it would not be standard practice for that advice to be issued to the public at large. And that's a general practice, not just relevant to this particular issue, but to all issues.
Okay, thank you very much.
Supplementary.
Sorry, we're moving on now, Councillor Edlin.
Supplementary.
I will
please.
in this case, but it's not usual. And also, given the contentious nature, you had your time to have your say at the motion, so I will allow a supplementary and then we will move on.
First of all, I don't believe it's contentious, but I'll let that's a matter of opinion. But what I will ask is, as that paper has been seen by all the councillors, or has been available to them, in the issue of transparency, which we like to have, I thought, in this council, should this not be made public at this point? I don't see anything in it that is particularly contentious. It cannot be seen.
Jerry?
Yeah, Councillor Edlin, you'll obviously recall that, you know, as a councillor, you too have duties of confidentiality towards the council. We disclose the information, the legal advice to councillors on the understanding that it remains confidential to the councillors and that the councillors will not disclose it further. That doesn't violate or cut across the concept that I've already spoken about in terms of legal privilege. There is a wider aspect to this as well, that whilst this is one particular issue, the concept of legal privilege applies more generally. In other words, if legally privileged documents are released into the wider public domain, there is an argument that can be made back that all legally privileged documents should thereafter be released, because the fact that comes from a legal source to provide legal advice, to provide legal opinion, no longer holds the significance that the law would otherwise afford it. So, although in a particular case you might think there's nothing particularly sensitive or particularly problematic with releasing that legal advice, that can cut across other legal advices in relation to other matters and undermine the validity of the confidentiality of those documents. I should also say that the fact of the matter is that this is King's Council's opinion, and King's Council, in that sense, is a commercial entity who offers his advice in return for payment which the Council has made. Disclosing that information without King's Council's consent is therefore an issue as well, because you are effectively cutting across the opportunity for him to provide services to others for a price.
Okay, thank you very much. But I have to say, we have all agreed to a report being prepared. Everybody was in agreement to that, so we can look forward to the report as requested, and that's been agreed across the chamber. So thank you very much for that. Can we agree that set of minutes then? Agreed? Thank you. Licensing Committee meeting 29th of April. Audit and scrutiny of the 8th of May and the Cabinet 29th of May. Planning Applications Committee of the 4th of June. Local Review Body of the 4th of June. Cabinet, Police and Fire 5th of June. Licensing Committee 10th of June. Education Committee of the 12th of June. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 6, items remitted to the Council. This is the Code of Corporate Governance and Annual Governance Statement, pages 17 to 72 of your papers. And I'd like to invite Councillor Morrison, Chair of Audit and Scrutiny Committee, to comment. We also have Kirsty Stanners, Head of Finance and Chief Financial Officer, in attendance and would be able to take any questions. So, first of all, Councillor Morrison, can I invite you to comment? Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I would like to begin by extending my appreciation to the team who have prepared this comprehensive report. Quite a substantial amount of work has gone in behind the scenes. On the 19th of August, the Audit and Scrutiny Committee considered the report on the Code of Corporate Governance and the 2024-25 Annual Governance Statement. As recommended by the External Auditor in the 2024-25 Annual Audit Plan, this was the first time that the committee considered the Annual Governance Statement as a separate item. Previously, the statement was only included in the unaudited financial statements or the accounts. The Annual Governance Statement sets out the governance framework of the Council, a review of its effectiveness, key actions planned, all relating to governance for the year ahead. The actions in this statement are also included in the Council's Code of Corporate Governance for 2025-26. Following a discussion on the statement, I'm pleased to say that the Audit and Scrutiny Committee agreed to recommend to Council that this be adopted. Subject to Council's approval of the statement today and the annual accounts at the September meeting, the statement will be posted on the Council's website to ensure public transparency and ease of access to the Council's governance arrangements and planned improvement actions. That's all, Provost. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor O'Donnell.
No, not a question, but a comment, and thanks to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee and the Finance team for doing this work. It's the first time I remember seeing such thorough analysis, and particularly on the evidence checklist at the back. So that's very reassuring, and it should give everyone in council confidence that this statement can be approved and signed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Provost. It's on page 33, C2, 4, and obviously the evaluations, majority of them are 3s, but with that one in particular, it's a 2. And with regards to my equalities brief, it concerned me that we're ensuring fair access to services, and I appreciate there's an ongoing implementation of a response to the new consumer duty. It's just to get more background on that, and will that be delivered urgently or within a short period of time? Thank you.
Thank you. Where is Kirsty? Louise. Oh, it's Louise. Right, thanks, Louise.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, we've probably been a bit harsh on ourselves in terms of that scoring, to be fair, but we just wanted to be transparent about the fact that there's another piece that we want to add into our equality and fairness risk assessment templates, and that's to reflect the new consumer duty. I actually met my team on that this afternoon, so we've already built that into the template, and they were just checking that that was good to go, so we will be ready with that very shortly and launch that. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you very much to Louise Pringle, who is the Director of Business Operations. Are there any other questions, or can we agree the minute? Agreed? Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8, statements by conveners and representatives on joint boards and committees. Are there any statements to be made? Could you please indicate? Councillor Pagnell?
Although I believe Councillor Anderson has one as well. Do you want to do it in alphabetical order?
No, you're on the microphone,
okay,
so you can go ahead.
Thank you, Provost. So I've got the statement from the Integration Joint Board held immediately before this meeting. So the IJB met earlier this afternoon and approved the unaudited annual report and accounts, which will now be submitted to our external auditors. We also had a discussion on the medium-term financial plan for the IJB, recognising this will be revised when needed in light of a number of emerging Scottish Government strategies focusing on renewal and prevention. We also approved the HSCP annual performance report, and the IJB recognised the significant outcomes for our people despite the continuing challenges facing health and social care nationally. The high value of partnership working was recognised as key to achieving good outcomes. Our new Chief Officer, Alexis, set out her commitments and ambitions to lead the HSCP in the coming months and develop a change and improvement programme, building on our achievements and focusing on local areas for improvement whilst incorporating the impacts from national reform initiatives. This is alongside promoting longer financial resilience and developing our skilled workforce to plan for the longer term. The strategic plan was approved, recognising the links to the Council and the Health Board strategies, recognising that this will be dynamic and evolve given the significant level of local and national change. The IJB supported the Equality and Human Rights mainstreaming report and also discussed the new equality outcomes for the next 3 years, with some discussion on reflecting stronger recognition on the prevention agenda for violence against women. The revised GIRFIC manual was also presented, which had been updated in line with the national model. This was also presented to the last Education Committee and recognises the joint working that takes place. The main changes from the refresh include strengthening children's rights, simplifying language, and it gives a deeper understanding of the impact of trauma, with even more emphasis on the inclusion of children, young people and their families at every stage of the process. The Chief Social Worker reminded us all that this is at the heart of everything we do when supporting our young people and their families. This was positively received by the IJB. The IJB had a brief presentation on the discharge without delays, and the HSCP currently sits 7th nationally and 20th when adults within capacity are included. There are 5 people in hospital today where we are planning for discharge, and a further 8 where we are working with their representatives or guardians. This concludes the statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pragnell. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Provost. I have 2 parts to my statement. The first about the Culture and Leisure Trust, the second about education. And with regards to the first part, at the most recent Culture and Leisure Trust board meeting, it was confirmed that the Trust has yet again made a surplus for the year 24-25, thanks to record-breaking performance figures across various operations, but in particular our gyms, swimming, community sports and theatre. Gym membership, community sports participation and our swimming lesson programme, despite pool closures, are all at an all-time high, and pitch hire turnover has also increased 44%. Once again, the theatre has broken its own box office records. Gym membership, community sports participation, no, hold on. This consistent high level of performance is a remarkable achievement, and we are fortunate as this is not the experience of many other leisure trusts throughout Scotland. And I want to repeat the sentiments expressed at the board meeting in congratulating the Trust and also thank the staff for delivering. The next part of the statement is with regards to the Armed Forces Covenant Scheme. And on the 15th of May, the Culture and Leisure Trust invited veterans to Barhead Foundry to celebrate the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day. The special gathering also saw the Trust receive the Armed Forces Covenant Employer Recognition Bronze Award in recognition of their support for the Armed Forces community. As part of this support, East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure developed the Health for Heroes scheme. This initiative launched in 2019 as the first programme of its kind in Scotland, offering free fitness memberships to support local veterans in partnership with East Renfrewshire Council. Captain David Hanley of the 102 Field Squadron presented the recognition award at the event, which was attended by veterans, local partners who support the Armed Forces community and local councillors, including Council Leader Owen O'Donnell and Councillor Campbell, who is the Veterans Champion. The next part of the statement it moves on to our active schools and the inter-secondary school sports day. The leader of the council and I attended the inter-school sports competition, which took place in May this year. All 7 secondary schools submitted teams of S1 to S3 pupils, with over 350 young people battling it out for the annual trophy. The games were hosted at Williamwood and St Ninians High Schools and Clarkson Tennis Club. Partners from Scottish Disability Sport, Giffnock Hockey Club, White Craigs Rugby Club and Clarkson Tennis Club helped deliver the event, with Basketball Scotland and Scottish Athletics also represented on the day, and we are grateful for all of their participation. For each of the 7 individual sport categories, the competition was significant, with Williamwood overall winners and Wood Farm and Mearns Castle finishing 2nd and 3rd respectively. The fun and excitement of competing in a multi-sport event and visiting another school is a highlight of the school sporting calendar, and there were some great individual and team performances. And finally, with regards to Education Committee, at the most recent committee there was an update report on our approach to getting it right for every child. And as part of this, a number of key actions were being taken forward to ensure that we get it right for every child, and this included an update on the use of mobile phones in our schools. Education have consulted on this topic through pupil council and head pupil meetings, parent council chair meetings and staff forums. In addition to this, they have audited current practice in our secondary schools. The next step will be to design and implement a fuller consultation, which will involve creating a questionnaire which will be issued to parents and carers, pupils and staff in schools. The results of this consultation will inform how we then update guidance for schools in East Renfrewshire. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ireland. Moving now to item 9, Provost engagement.
Provost, I wonder. Yeah, Provost, I'm just wondering, is that the extent of the convener's delivery there? Wondering whether he wants to use the forum here to allay the fears that many have had from the recent bad press we've had in education.
That is the end of the councillors. The convener's statement. I'm now at item 9, which is Provost engagement.
Right, okay.
Simply
Maybe
for
we'll
noting.
get something at the
Agreed.
Education
Agreed.
Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item
Provost,
10,
can I just get
General
some
Fund. We're on to General Fund Capital Programme.
Can I just get some clarity on something? And that is...
Is it on item 10?
Well, I just wanted to know, is there an opportunity for members to question the conveners on their statements?
No, no,
Okay, thank
no,
you.
and that's a long-standing arrangement. Item 10, General Fund Capital Programme, pages 75 to 98. Kirsty Stanners, Head of Finance, and other members of the corporate management team are in attendance and will be able to take any questions regarding this item. Are there any questions? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Provost. My question's in relation to page 76, 12, item I, Ors Road. I appreciate I'm a frequent flyer on this subject, and understandably so. I just wanted to ask, with relation to the anticipated costs and the time delay, has there been any assessment as to the gross value add economic benefit of the project? Given the fact that it's a City Deal project and one must demonstrate that there is economic benefit to obtain the funding from the City Deal, has there been a fresh assessment of that calculation undertaken, taking into account the delay and anticipated extra costs? Thank you.
Councillor Morrison, the original proposal for Ors Road was accompanied by a detailed business case, and that does take account of the gross value added proposed from the development. In fact, it was core to the award of the funding in the first place.
I must apologise, Michaela. I had my microphone on. I wonder if you would mind repeating that for the sake of the public information. So I apologise.
Thank you, Provost. The Ors Road project had an assessment of gross value added as part of the business case, and in fact such an assessment was core to the award of funding for the project in the first place, Councillor Morrison.
Okay. We've got our microphones coordinated, Councillor Morrison. Thank you very much. So, would you like to ask another question on this? And can you put your microphone on now?
Okay.
Good, thanks.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, thank you for that response, Mrs. Silver. The nature of my query was whether there's any potential need to recalculate the equation due to the anticipated additional costs and the economic impact, detrimental economic impact of the delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Yes, indeed, at the end of the project, once we are fully aware of the costs of the project, then that assessment will be recalculated.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, colleagues, can we agree the recommendations on page 75? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 11, Housing Capital Programme, pages 99 to 106. Kirsty Stanners, again, Head of Finance and Chief Financial Officer, and other members of the CMT Corporate Management Team are in attendance and are able to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? Councillor Morrison, then Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you again, Provost. My question in this paper relates to page 104 and the budget for site investigations and acquisitions. Further to the housing emergency which this council declared in the autumn of last year, it was my understanding that the proposed approach would be to investigate as many possible sites as possible and acquire them if appropriate. Considering this fund is likely to be underspent in the year, I just wanted to query if that is indeed still the plan, or does this perhaps indicate that there is a shortage of potential sites to investigate? Thank you.
Councillor O'Donnell.
I'd just like to come in first before handing over to Mark or Katrina. There's two separate things here. This is the housing account, and the homeless fund that we set up is two separate things. The homeless account is going out and buying typically ex-council property. This is specifically for the housing revenue account for tenants in the normal course of business rather than focused on homelessness and temporary housing for them, which was the Invest for the Future Fund. But perhaps I'll pass on to Mark or Katrina to sort of clarify, unless that's sufficient.
I fully understand what the Leader of the Council has said there. It was more with reference to the housing revenue account. I fully understand, and I believe it is the appropriate response to purchase housing off the shelf, so to speak, to help alleviate the emergency. It's more a concern that we're perhaps not investigating as many sites as there should be to build more sustainable housing for ourselves. And we've underspent that fund, so I was querying as to why we had underspent that. Was it because there's a shortage of appropriate sites to actually investigate? That was all. Thank you.
Definitely pass that on to Mark, and that's about the pipeline, and it's your concerns are valid.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. So what we've been able to do as a result of additional grant award from the Scottish Government is look at changing the timeline for bringing forward various sites for delivery of new social housing. So the amount that's allowed for is believed to be sufficient to enable us to carry out any site investigation works in conjunction with the acceleration of the project. So that's welcome news. Not many councils do get additional grant offered to them, and that's a reflection on how well the team have delivered over the last 12 months.
That's very welcome. Thank you.
If there are, Councillor O'Donnell.
I did want to come anyway, and it was actually, Mark sort of alluded to it. I would like to thank the housing team for their work with the Scottish Government on negotiating that grant, because that has given us the good problem of having grant funding for this year, which we didn't expect and wasn't planned for in the original pipeline. So that perhaps reflects a little bit of what you're seeing, Councillor Morrison, and the capital report now, but it is a reflection of the good work they did on accelerating Maidenhill last year and basically getting extra grant income in because we were able to deliver on Maidenhill, and that is quite a result for the housing team and is much welcomed. And with that, I would also welcome the acceleration of the Barhead Road a capital plan, which, because of the issues with the grants previously, was further down the line, but that is now being accelerated because there's now grant available to make that financially feasible. So again, thanks to the housing team for that.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure that your commendation of the housing team is shared by all colleagues across the council. So can we agree the recommendations on page 99? Agreed, colleagues?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 12, Local Child Poverty Action Report, pages 107 to 148, and Louise Pringle, Director of Business Operations and Partnerships, and Alexis Chappelle, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, please correct me if I'm wrong, our new Chief Officer, Health and Social Care Partnership, are both in attendance and can answer any questions on this paper. Are there any questions or comments?
It's more
Councillor O'Donnell, then Councillor Morrison.
It's more a comment. Really welcome this report, and pleasing to see that the child poverty levels have now reduced from 14% to 12% and continue to be the lowest levels in Scotland. Particularly pleasing to see the impacts of income maximisation efforts and employability efforts on these numbers. Clearly, though, that we still have work to do on this. We still have 2,800...
Unknown participant is now exiting.
We still have 2,800 children in poverty, which is far too many. But good to see that the national target of 10% child poverty levels by 2030 is firmly in our sights, and I would hope that we can meet these targets well before 2030. So thank you very much, Louise, for this report. And obviously this is a classic example of partnership working across the council and our partners. We're certainly seeing progress, so much to welcome on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Morrison, and then I see Councillor Wallace is indicating he wishes to speak, and then Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Provost. Just to ask a question in terms of page 118, we will improve income from employment for parents, which I think is a laudable aim. because ultimately to tackle poverty, really we need employers out there to pay the workers a fair wage. Now, many of those who do seek living wage employer accreditation, which the council through Business Gateway assists them with. Is that something which is still taking place? Because I'm surprised not to see that on the report. So is that something that we still offer employers within the local area?
Katrina?
Yes, we do still offer that support, and that is very much part of our programme of work with businesses to encourage the living wage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Katrina Macaulay, who is the Director of Environment. And then it was Councillor Wallace, then Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Provost. I'm curious to see that there's no mention of education as part of the Child Poverty Action Report. I'm thinking of things like home budgeting, home extra, and just the significant role that education does play, particularly when teaching our youngsters when they're going through school about how to budget, how to cook, home, etc. So I wonder, is there any particular reason why education has been left out of this Poverty Action Report? Thank you.
Thank you. Louise, are you going to continue with answering? I thank you very much.
Councillor Wallace, perhaps the examples that you've given aren't particularly relevant or coming out in the report, but I can assure you education is very much a part of our local child poverty action response and very much a player in there. You'll mention there are statistics in there about the cost of the school day audits that are very much a part of what education have been doing and rolling that out across schools, and we've seen a good uptake in that this year, and lots of work going on with head teachers and in classrooms and engagement with money advice and rights services in schools, etc. So education are very much a part of our response there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Buchanan.
Thanks, Provost. Very much again welcome this report and the very positive direction in which things are moving, but clearly there is still work to be done, and I know that officers and I know that as a council we continue to do that and strive to get those figures down even more. A huge amount of work does get done clearly by the council, by the authority, by the resources that we have. There are always going to be challenges, and whether those challenges be things like the 2-child cap or potential changes to the welfare situation, they will all play a part, but it's good to note that we are moving in that direction, and hopefully we will get to a stage sooner rather than later where we can eradicate poverty across our authority. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Buchanan, are there any other points or questions? For Councillor Wallace, it's just been pointed out to me that on page 139 about actions we've taken in 2024-25 supporting schools to understand and act, so there's actions and achievements in there regarding education, so that's helpful. It's also to point it out to anybody who might be viewing to have a wee look at that. But thank you very much for all these questions and comments. It's something that is really important to us all. So, can we agree that... Oh, I'm sorry, Council.
Thank you,
Sorry.
It's actually just a comment. I actually think it's a really positive report, and Louise, I think your team are to be congratulated on the amount of work that you're putting into this, and I want to particularly note impactful parents. I found that really exciting because what you're doing is it's a programme aimed at unemployed parents from Barrhead, and it's designed as a fun, non-traditional employability programme with an emphasis on using visual arts and improve health and well-being and performance, drama skills to build confidence and develop communication skills. And I really applaud that because it's, I think that drama and performance and the arts are not used enough to develop people's skills. So I found that really exciting and really fabulous. So thank you for that.
Okay, if there are no further questions, can we agree the recommendations on page 107? Agreed? Thank you. Item 13, Strategic End-Year Performance Report and Annual Community Planning and Fairer East End Report for 2024-25 on pages 149 to 218. So the Chief Executive and other members of the CMT are in attendance, will be able to take questions regarding this item. Are there any questions, colleagues? Councillor Pragnell.
Thank you, Promise. It's in relation to page 155 where it mentions breastfeeding at 6 to 8 weeks most deprived SIMD data zones. I was just wondering what more can be done to address this, whilst acknowledging that breastfeeding can be difficult and the needs of the mother must also be taken as a priority. I've also got another question, which is page 179, which is to do with healthy birth rate. And it's noticing there has been a decrease in that. So I was wondering if there is any particular trend or reason for this that has been identified.
Thank you, Councillor Pragnell. So, sorry, Mrs. Chappell. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Chappell to answer, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pragnell, for your questions. So in response to the question regarding breastfeeding, East Renfrewshire has a proactive model for early breastfeeding intervention, and our health and care support workers are all trained to support very much health visitors with a specific focus on identifying SIMD 1 and 2 when due birth notification comes in. Recently, the funding for external groups was seized, but however NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde has awarded a contract to the Breastfeeding Network who plan to run 15 community groups, and very much from a health and care partnership point of view we will be absolutely supporting that and going forward. In relation to the question around birth weight, the Eastwood Health Visiting Team have established an infant feeding group and are now planning to relaunch that group to support increasing numbers and to be proactive in how we very much support people going forward.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Nobody online? Councillor O'Donnell.
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm looking forward to a new combined report when we're reporting under A Place to Grow in the following year. I think I certainly have always found it confusing to have the community planning report and then the year-end performance report side by side because there's a lot of repetition. So I'll be looking forward to a combined report. A couple of things I'd just like to draw out of this that caught my eye, and there's lots of potential areas that you could pick on. But firstly, doubling the number of homeless households into permanent accommodation, given the situation that we've been in, that shows real action, so I'm pleased to see that. And combined with that, doubling the target of for affordable homes coming into supply. Obviously, that was Maidenhill, but again, really good to see that. An area that also caught my eye was employee satisfaction, going up from 72 to 79%. That's quite a big increase in 1 year, and I think that bodes well for the future. Something I've gone on about for quite a while was the average life expectancy of men compared to women. Good to see that both of those have increased, but actually the gap between men and women has reduced a little bit. So that's encouraging. And just finally, I'd just like to mention the success of the East Renfrewshire Accelerator Programme. It was nice to see that included, and the great success of that first cohort. And I'm looking forward to meeting the new cohort in the next few months. So more comments than questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions from anybody else? There doesn't seem to be. So can I take the opportunity? Some thanks have been given to some of the employees that have been mentioned in the reports, foregoing reports. So can I take the opportunity to thank all the workers, all the staff across the council for all they do day in, day out in making this a great council that has got a good reputation throughout Scotland and I'm sure beyond. So can that be conveyed to the staff, please, Chief Executive? A big thank you. So can we agree the recommendations? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So item 14, very sadly to have to to deal with the consequences of our colleague Betty Cunningham having passed away. So the Chief Executive in his capacity as the returning officer is in attendance and can answer any questions on this paper. Are there any questions, colleagues? None. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. We just note it because it's not for us to agree or disagree. So we can agree to note it, and that's good. Thank you very much for that. And turning now to, as I'd mentioned earlier, there's an opportunity for members to pay tribute to our colleague Betty Cunningham, who was a councillor first elected in 1999. And many of us councillors and staff have worked with Betty for many years in the numerous roles that she held, including Provost, Deputy Provost. She worked in housing, planning and licensing. And I'm sure you'll join with me in sending our collective condolences to her family and friends, and also to note what a great loss Betty is already, for what a personality. I don't think it's been truer to say there was only one Betty. So can I invite the group leaders first of all, and then other members if they wish to share their thoughts or anecdotes about the renowned and legendary Councillor Betty Cunningham. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you very much, Provost, and thanks for the opportunity to lead the tributes to Councillor Betty Cunningham, OBE. I've known Betty for around 15 years, but only got to know her well after becoming Leader of the Council in May 2022. After a brief period of her checking me out to see what sort of person and leader I was, and after a very long lunch in one of her favourite places, the Rook and Glen Garden Centre cafeteria, where I have to admit at least 1 or 2 cigarettes were taken, we became very close and trusted friends and colleagues. She had seen it all in East Renfrewshire Council, and her nuggets of history on the people, the battles, the politics were very insightful for a new leader. Betty had very simple and usually correct instincts on what was right and what was wrong. And Betty was never shy in giving her opinion. She always stood up for the rights of council tenants, ensuring they were receiving best service and good value for money. We now have a political test in housing when making decisions, and that is, what would Betty say? A phrase that would send a shiver down Councillor Danny Devlin's back when he thought how he was going to explain stuff to Betty, because I certainly wasn't. She was an important customer in the room and fearsome in her arguments to support our tenants. Sometimes you learn more about a person in death than you do when they're living. Betty was not someone who flaunted her achievements. I didn't know for at least a year after becoming leader that Betty had been awarded an OBE. And the OBE was found in a dusty box at the top of a cupboard after her passing, not on display or looking for recognition. I learned a lot about Betty from the many kind and insightful comments and tributes posted about her after her death. From the detailed early day motion at Holyrood from Paul O'Kane MSP that outlined her life and achievements, from the memorable eulogy of Jim Murphy at her funeral mass, where he read out a letter from the former Prime Minister Tony Blair, thanking her for her loyalty and personal support, and using his comment to quote, "I hope your bark is not worse than your bite." We may all have an opinion on that, and we have all been at the end of her bark, but perhaps not her bite. And the comments from the people of East Renfrewshire on Facebook when notice of her passing was posted, many heartfelt descriptions were made, including formidable, a champion for Dunterley, a remarkable public servant, strong, fierce, colourful, a force of nature, always went above and beyond to help others, always had the community at heart, great friend, 1 in a million, once met, never forgotten, a true local hero, always full of fun, One thing I want to mention though, technology skills. An early adopter of the Nokia mobile phone in the 1990s. Betty so loved that phone that she never changed the model. But she never quite mastered when to charge it or how to use the mute button when dialing into council meetings. I am sure we will all miss these little idiosyncrasies that could lighten up very serious council meetings. Betty was first elected in East Renfrewshire Council in 1999, representing the Barrhead East Ward, and was subsequently elected to all successor wards, including the Barrhead, Leiboside and Uplandmore ward in 2022. She served as Provost from 2003 until 2007, and always looked fondly back to that time, where despite her clear Labour politics, was able to command respect and build friendships across the political divide. She dedicated vast amounts of her time to local organisations, including churches and hospices, and raised huge sums for charities, including her own Betty Cunningham International Trust, which supported the provision of education, school meals for children, and healthcare in the community of Kaponda and Malawi, transforming lives. She was no prouder when talking of her grand wains in Kaponda, qualifying as doctors. Betty took hundreds of young people from East Renfrewshire, including now Councillor Chris Lundy, on life-changing volunteering opportunities and cultural exchange to Malawi. She was a passionate councillor and campaigner for Barrhead, helping to deliver the new Barrhead Health Centre, the new Barrhead High School, the new Carlybar Primary School and Communication Centres, and various new early learning centres, including at Cross Arthurley Primary School and St John's Primary School. And she would not take no for an answer to her ambitious plans, going directly to the doors of Prime Minister Tony Blair and First Minister Jack McConnell. She actually knew what service station Jack McConnell used and used to doorstep him there. Betty was particularly delighted to see the continued progress and attainment of all our young people in schools, particularly in Barrhead. She was a very proud council tenant who loved her home in Dunterley, which she had lived in for most of her life, caring for her elderly parents and then her own family and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Betty was recognised by the Queen for services to local government and charity with the award of an OBE. But she was no prouder than when she received the Lifetime Legend Award in 2024 from the Local Government Information Unit, representing all Scottish councillors. That recognition from peers meant a lot to her as she was reaching the end of her career and sat proudly on her mantelpiece. We did not know at the time that this was the last chance we would have to submit her nomination, but I'm so glad we did, and thanks to Councillor Katie Pragnell for helping to organise that. There was only one Betty Cunningham. She broke the mould, and her determination has set the scene for budding women politicians to follow. Her generosity in helping people knew no bounds. Betty had the biggest heart. Barrhead will not be quite the same without Betty Cunningham, its Duchess of Dunterley. I will miss her. We will all miss her. Rest in peace, Betty. Your legacy will live long. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I think Councillor O'Donnell's covered many of the facts about Betty's history across the area. I think it's safe to say that she will be very sadly missed across the council, but fondly remembered for all that she'd done for East Renfrewshire and in particular for the Leven Valley and Barrhead. I think I first met Betty it must be about 25 years ago now, when I had moved to Barrhead and was chair of the Barrhead Community Council. I had many discussions with her about what I felt needed done, what she felt needed done, and how we could go about and do that. And then following being elected in 2007, working very closely with her particularly in the regeneration, and Councillor O'Donnell's touched on many of the aspects at that time. There was an unfortunate crash back in 2008, but we still managed to work together and as a council delivered significantly for the Leven Valley with a lot of the regeneration projects that took hold and that we were able to see to fruition. And that was fantastic to be able to do that, and Betty's support was huge in achieving it. Across the board, Betty was a stalwart in her community. She was known by everyone. She was fearless, a fearless fighter on behalf of her community, and she was feisty when required, and of course wouldn't tolerate anyone who would decry her beloved Barrhead. She was also a great believer in fairness and equity, and that shone through, whether that be at home or whether it be abroad in Malawi, and her work that she did there through her charity to protect lives and to encourage education. And that was, again, fantastic work both at home and abroad, or indeed both her homes, as she often called them. Betty stood up for people, not just everyday people, ordinary people, but she stood up particularly for those most in need and for the most vulnerable. She gave them a voice and made sure that the council delivered for them. And so she will be a very, very sad loss to Barrhead, to East Renfrewshire, and to this council. So rest in peace, Betty.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Provost. There's little I can add to these many heartfelt tributes and memories that have been shared, not just within the bounds of the council chamber, or indeed East Renfrewshire, but as we know, by the way of her charitable work well beyond these shores. My abiding memory of Betty is of her innate ability, with just a few of her own, sometimes colourful, choice words, to bring clarity to an otherwise verbose political debate. She was simply someone who got things done, helped in no small part by her being a true people person, which, as Councillor O'Donnell has mentioned earlier on, managed to form close connections regardless of political affiliation or background. Indeed, when serving as Provost, Betty's deputy of choice was the late John Shaw, a Conservative councillor for the then single-member ward of Giffnock South, and together they formed a very close working relationship, splitting their respective duties between the Leven Valley and the eastwood side of the authority. Now, while my own acquaintance with Betty was limited to council affairs, it's self-evident from all the tributes shared that she made a lasting impact on the lives of so many. And few, I'm sure, could say they were not the better for having spent time in her company. Thank you, Provost, for the opportunity to be able to say a few words. It's not a case of Betty will be missed. She is missed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace. Is there anybody else would like to share? Councillor MacDonald, then Councillor Pragnell.
Thanks, Provost, for the opportunity. And now, Betty Wood Cunningham, OBE, was not an ordinary woman by any stretch of the imagination. She was a trade union shop steward, a councillor, a provost, a deputy provost, a convener and chair many times over, a fiercely proud fighter for her community in Barrhead, and a powerful advocate for the hungry, the poor and the less privileged, both locally and in far-off lands. She spent a huge amount of her time raising funds for the cause she most cherished, children in Malawi. Her charitable work through the Betty Cunningham Charitable Trust helped to build nursery schools and a health centre. To Betty, those in need, whether in her ward or far away, were of equal importance, and she viewed us all as, no matter where, as God's children. She took her role in local politics seriously, a proud member of the Labour Party, where she was fighting for the little guy or brewing up a cheeky plan to get more potholes filled. Betty was a true champion of her community. And let's not forget her stubborn streak. If you ever found yourself in a debate with her, well, good luck. She could hold her ground better than any of us, and woe betide anyone who would try to convince her otherwise. Quite a few of us know what it was like to be on the end of one of Betty's trademark hard stares, and the following pause before moving on. It was the stuff of a headmistress not to be messed with. But Betty also had a very cheeky sense of humour that could brighten the dullest of meetings. Her timing was the stuff of comedic genius, when very often at the end of her phone we would hear audible groans of disapproval after contributions we made in this chamber she disagreed with. I myself was not spared from this, and almost always expected it. She had a knack for turning the most mundane council discussions into moments of raucous laughter, and sometimes we as councillors needed these moments to clear the air and unravel a bit of the tension in heated debates. I can still hear her saying to me once, "If only we could smoke our problems away, I'd have solved world hunger by now." Privately, there was a very quiet and sometimes moderately shy Betty, in stark contrast to her public persona. It was at these times that I really enjoyed the quiet one-on-one conversations with her. She was a joy to talk to alone, and she shared a wealth of experience and insight and a great sense of political instinct. One thing I got from these conversations was just how kind-hearted, thoughtful, and quietly considered she was on a personal level. She befriended colleagues you'd least expect across the aisle, and despite her being very proud of her Labour membership, never let it cloud her ability or willingness to be really decent and kind to political opponents. And let's talk about her principles. Betty believed in standing up for what was right, even if it meant ruffling a few feathers. She was as principled as they come, and her commitment to her beliefs was unwavering. If you wanted someone on your side, Betty was your woman. Just don't expect her to back down easily. As we say our final goodbyes, let's remember Betty with laughter and joy. She lived her life unapologetically, cheeky and stubborn to the end. She leaves behind a legacy of unrivaled community service, charity to her fellow human beings, and the occasional eye roll from those who tried to convince her of a view she did not agree with. So here's to Betty Wood Cunningham, a spirited woman who showed us that life is too short to take too seriously. May her warm spirit live on in our hearts and remind us all to stand firm in our beliefs with a smile and a joke ready to share. It really will not be the same without Betty, and she leaves a massive void in this chamber, in her community, and she will always remain in our memories. May she rest in peace.
Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Anybody else would wish to speak? Councillor Pragnell.
Betty wasn't just a colleague, she was a friend. My first encounter with Betty was in Barhead Main Street when I was 4 years old with my late gran. I believe this was one of Betty's many impromptu street surgeries. It has been an honour to have known Betty for 24 years. Betty was a formidable force for good and had a heart of gold. She was a devoted public servant who loved her community at home and in Malawi. She worked tirelessly to make a difference. I am grateful for her personal support over the years. She was there in the good times and the bad. Betty wasn't afraid to tell me when I messed up, and I will always appreciate that. Betty was always impeccably dressed and her hair perfectly in place. When I asked her what her secret was, she would never tell me. I miss you, Betty, and in particular, East Renfrewshire and Barhead will never be the same without you. But I know that everyone in this chamber will ensure your legacy lives on for years to come.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pragnell. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Provost. This won't be quite as eloquent as some of the earlier contributions. I just wanted to share some anecdotes of Betty, really. First conversation I had with Betty was after the count in 2022 over at the Barhead Foundry, and the result had just been declared, so went outside for a nicotine fix. And of course, if you ever were looking for Betty, when business wasn't being transacted, that was as good a place as any to look for her. So she warmly congratulated me on my result, which, you know, when you're new to everything, you don't know how people in other political parties are perhaps going to receive that. But it was a very genuine congratulations, and Betty shared her kind of advice, you know, keep your own counsel. Quite a lot of other pearls of wisdom as well, which are probably not repeatable before the watershed. I'll really miss Betty's genuine, warm friendship, her authenticity. I think that's the universal marker that people will miss, whether they are constituents, colleagues, friends. Spending time with Betty was like spending time with your grandmother in some ways, and I think a lot of people have said the same thing, which really speaks to her personality and how warm she was to, you know, her colleagues, particularly people in other parties as well. And I know that some of our former colleagues Betty was still in touch with. So it wasn't just a transactional work relationship, it was a genuine friendship. I'm acutely aware from listening to some of the other stories that, you know, I only knew Betty for 3 years. I only knew a tip of the iceberg of the anecdotes and the advice which colleagues have shared tonight. But nevertheless, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the time that I did get to spend with her and getting to know her, and may she rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morrison. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Provost. After Betty's passing, and the first time I was in council when we had opened the Book of Condolence for Betty, I remember sitting down, and at first, all I could say on the bit of paper was I'm struggling to find the words to actually describe appreciation of her, and before I knew it, I'd filled a page. And I think that says a lot. So I think, to sum up really, Betty, I realise for me, has set the bar in terms of service to the people of Barrhead in East Renfrewshire, and something I think that is a bar that we should all strive to achieve in terms of her relentless and unapologetic, as Councillor MacDonald said, aim of serving the people that she represented. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. And if there's nobody else, oh sorry, Councillor Lundy.
Thanks, thank you, Provost. I just wanted to add that I met Betty first of all when I went to Malawi, and immediately struck a relationship up with her. I thought she was a remarkable woman then, and from what I experienced in Malawi, you could see how much the people appreciated and loved her there. And I think from what I've heard from multiple constituents in Barrhead as well, the people loved her here. She's definitely made an impact here and abroad, and I hope that her legacy lives on, particularly through the work that she's so much to Malawi, and I hope that is remembered, and I'm sure that it will be, because she's got a lot of fans there, she's got a lot of family there, and I'm sure they'll continue to sing her praises, and she was just a remarkable lady, and I'm very happy to have spent the time with her as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lundy. It's been very moving listening to all the anecdotes, and as you say, Betty was a strong woman, very often strong in language as well, but we all have good memories of her, and many a laugh we had with Betty as well. So thank you very much, everybody. For Betty to rest in peace seems like a paradox, but we do hope Betty does rest in peace, and we thank her collectively for her service. Thank you very much, everybody. And that now ends the council meeting. Thank you for attendance. Thank you.